Welcome to Train Signal. I'm Mel Haynes, and you're watching our Advanced SQL Server 2008 Database Administration Training course. In this video, the focus is a little shorter than that opening title. We'll be looking at setup and installation. But looking at the overview for this video, we'll be looking at the different editions of SQL Server 2008. We'll also perform an installation, a clean, brand new install. We'll look at and utilize the SQL Server 2008 Installation Center, which is a multifaceted application. It does a lot more than just installations, but we'll be looking at that, using that. There's some key installation options you'll need to look at related to security. So we'll kind of walk on the edge, getting a little bit into some security issues, such as the types of authentication and user accounts, because it'll be required for the installation. We'll be using the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 Management Studio, get you introduced to that. And then, of course, very important when you're looking at installing a new piece of software is what is the hardware, disk space, software, extra software required, all that other stuff. So we'll be looking at all of those things as well. So let's jump right in looking at what are the additions of SQL Server 2008. And I'm not going to try and give you all the details on that. It's a catalog in of itself. But at a high level, these three are where you're going to probably land in, 75% of the cases out there. Enterprise, standard, or small business. And then they each have various flavors. So notice I have parentheses under each one. My Enterprise Edition has a 32-bit, the x86, 64-bit, and an IA64. And then for a little background information on that, that's going to give you your full-blown enterprise class scalability. So if you're doing things with clustering and things of that nature, you're going to be on the Enterprise Edition. Your high availability, your full gamut of everything available in BI is going to be there in your Enterprise Edition. We'll talk about BI business intelligence a little bit more later on. But moving into Standard Edition, notice there's no IA64 anymore. But you still have your 32 and your 64-bit editions of the standard as well as the small business, and some of the differences there. You don't get the full BI capability, but you get quite a bit. No more clustering, no more enterprise level scalability. And then your small business, it's basically saying, hey, if you got a small number of people, 75 or fewer people pulling from your SQL box, you're good to go. Beyond that, you move beyond a small business, which is quite true. But few others to list. SQL Server 2008 Developer, once again, runs on a few different processor types. This is basically the same as the Enterprise Edition, but it's licensed only for development and testing. So you're not going to put that into production, but you can later on upgrade to production. There is a Workgroup Edition. So you've got SQL Server at the corporate office and you want to have various other stuff local at various local branch offices. You can use a Workgroup Edition to help support that type of a paradigm. There's a web edition. So if you want something that's a little bit less maintenance, a little simpler, stripped down version of SQL Server, you have that available as well. Then there's the freebies, the free ones. There's the Express, also known as the SSE. There's an SSE with tools and with advanced services. All of those are free and can be redistributed for free. There may be some additional paperwork and signing away of rights, privileges, and maybe revenue possibly, but those are available. And then there's the compact editions of SQL Server 2008. There's Compact 3.5 and 3.1. Both of those are 32-bit only, but it allows you to do things with embedded databases, ideal for various occasionally connected applications, right? So if you've got something running on some disconnected device that, say, downloads information and then they run off with it, this could be your tool of choice, all right? And with that, at this point, we have everything we need to install SQL Server 2008. So we're going to start with a completely clean Windows 2008 box with, as far as I know, all the latest updates. I recommend getting all those in place. And then we're going to go ahead and install SQL Server. So you know what hardware, you know what operating system you have to have, you know how much RAM, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and do it. So let's jump over and get into it. So here, let's do a download. I can grab my browser just to take you to our company webpage, right? Go to Microsoft.com/SQL Server, which I have visited at least once or twice before. Go to the trial page, go to the download it now. You have a IT professionals and you had a developer over here on the right. You could pick either one of those. Those are ugly pictures. Pick a language you like. United States is what I'll go with for today. Maybe tomorrow something else. Put in an email address and a password. Of course, you have a Microsoft Live account. If not, create one, or a Hotmail account, or one of those. Get you into a continue button. Yes, I want to. No, I do not. Just take me to your downloads. I want the second one. I'll do a continue there. Hit download. And you want to open this up because it's going to take you to a page with links. Gives you a few different options. Enterprise Edition is available as an image file. So you can grab a DVD image and then burn that to a DVD. Or in my case, I'm going to grab that. And then I can just, in my virtual environment, point to that ISO file as my CD-ROM drive. So you can do that. Or you can just download the self-extracting exe. You have three different choices here. You have the x86, your 32-bit, your x64, your 64-bit, and then you have versions for other processors. So take your pick. Like I said, in my case, DVD image works best. Please wait while the download manager begins your download. So with that rolling along, of course, if you get these wonderful little things, you have to say, it wants to add something, and I have to say yes if I want that, so my download manager can run. Install that. Save my ISO to documents. Things are moving along as planned, all 3.0 gigabytes. I'll minimize that. Trying to close. Sure, I'm done with you. Actually, I'm done with you as well. Now, for those of you who are actually downloading this, you'll want to let that finish. I don't really need that. I've already done it, actually. And let me just jump ahead and show you where I put mine. Now, if you're downloading, just pause the DVD or video, and you can catch up later. But here, I'm going to minimize that. In my case, I'm doing everything in a VM. And all I need to do, let's see if I can put this so you can see it. It's not all on your screen, but there's enough of it here. There's an ISO right here. All I did was point my virtual environment to the ISO file. Now that probably will not apply to most of you, granted. But if you're working in a VM, hey, there it is. If you're not working in a VM and you just want the exe, actually your route will be easier. You just double click on the exe, taking the exe route, right? Double click on it, and that'll start your install. So assuming you guys have that, I'm going to go ahead and kill this. I don't really need it. I already have it. Close that down. Actually, I don't even want this icon cluttering up my desktop. I'll blow that away as well. So there. Now, how do I start my install? Go to Computer, go to my CD-ROM drive, which is just pointing to my ISO. I can right-click or double-click and go to Install, and that will start my installation. SQL Server 2008 setup requires some stuff, right? .NET Framework and an update to the Windows installer, so I need to go get those. Click OK. And let it do its thing. Click OK. And I'm not going to bore you while the water level rises here. So we will come back when this is done. When it's done, first thing it asks for is a restart. You must comply. So I will let that restart. After the restart, just start the installation again, and we're rocking and rolling. Okay, reboot successful. Just start the process again. Now that I have those updates, right-click, install, let her rip. This time you should see a little different interface. New Windows updates again? Gee, we just did that this morning. Here, let's let this chug along. There's my SQL Server Installation Center. Let's talk about the options. Starting with planning. You got a lot of different choices for support when it comes to planning your SQL Server install. What hardware do I need? What software do I need? What's my security options? What's the latest release notes? There are websites, believe it or not. I know you find that hard to believe. No, of course there are, right? For all the different things you need for installing SQL Server for Microsoft. There's also a system configuration checker that helps you with determining if you're set for a successful SQL Server installation. I love it there, right? Install the Upgrade Advisor, as it says there, helps you with what you need to know to move from SQL 05 or SQL Server 2000 to SQL Server 2008. Online installation help, how to get started with failover clustering, way cool. And then other upgrade documentation. So you have all of those. Planning, installation is where we're going to spend most of our time for now. We'll come back to that. Maintenance, edition upgrade, repair tools. So if you've got a corrupt SQL Server installation, we have a tool to help you fix that. If you want to remove a node from, once again, clustering. We'll see a lot of cool clustering stuff in this one. Tools, other tools you have. I think we saw that already once before, right? System configuration checker. So yeah, there's a little redundancy, but that's okay. Makes it easier to find it. Install SQL Server features, discovery report. Once again, other reports and tools to help you make sure you get all the right stuff installed in the right place, no matter where you're coming from and where you want to move to. Other resources, just a long list of websites. Here's a cool one at the bottom, Codeplex samples. SQL Server 2008, and I believe it was the first release, I don't remember if 05 did this, doesn't come with any samples anymore. You have to go and get those separately from right here. I'll just click on it since we're there. Codeplex samples. So the various downloads available, SQL 2008, all product samples, right? Without a database for the 32-bit environment right there, plus various others. So you can click on that and grab that and play around with it. We may actually do some of that a little later, but I'm going to back out of this for now. Go back to my installation center. Go to Advanced. Install based on a configuration file. Gee, I'm installing not one, not two, but 1,400 installations of SQL Server. You might want to use a configuration file, get it right once, run it several times, right? You can do that. Advanced cluster preparations. Once again, clustering has a whole set of tools associated with that in and of itself, as well as the advanced cluster completion. And then there's the options. Notice I only have one because I'm dealing with the 32-bit choice, 32-bit software. So all I get is a 32-bit choice, right? Going back to installation, that's what we want to do. So that's where we want to start. Very first one on the list allows me to install a standalone installation of SQL Server or add features to an existing one. So we'll probably go through this, more than once, more than one trip through that one, right? SQL Server failover clustering again, more clustering. We'll get back to clustering. So like I said, we'll see this interface again. And there's your upgrade wizard tool. So a lot of different tools to get in and get it going. But like I said, we're starting with just installing. So I'll click on that. And maybe I should have clicked on it while I was talking. It could have been running its please wait, but it didn't take too long. We'll slide that up a hair. And set up support stuff. Click OK. Enter your enterprise product key. If you're dealing with the freebie one, do that here, but we have a product key, so I'll go with that. Click next. You have to accept the license. No choice with that one. You just gave away your entire life savings with that, but you get SQL Server instead, so such a deal. Click install, and that'll start the setup for installation. That's really what you're doing right now. We really haven't gotten into where we're really picking what we want to install for SQL Server, but these are some more background stuff and some background checks. It's going to come back and tell me, hey, here's some areas we think you may have a problem, or here's some areas that we looked at may look great, or here's some areas that are totally messed up. Take a look at them before you go on. Save yourself some headaches by checking up front as opposed to checking on the back end. Looks good. Lots of green. Green means good in this case. And one yellow, Windows Firewall. And I have a warning. What's that all about? Simply says that I have a firewall. That's it. SQL Server is pointing that out because if you're trying to communicate with clients on the other side of the firewall, you have to make sure you allow them access through the firewall. Well, we're totally aware of that and planning to take care of that when we get there. So let's move on. Feature selection. A lot of stuff you can install. Good rule of thumb, don't install it unless you really need it. If you're going to play around with it, maybe go ahead and install it as well. We are going to play around with most of the things on this list, but I'm not going to install all of them right now because notice this. If I click one of these, notice this list over here changes, right? It's adding other steps, other things I'll have to address throughout the installation process. So I don't really want replication just yet, but I do want the database engine, of course, at a minimum. And the other thing I'm going to grab is the management tools. So starting with just those two, click Next. Please wait. Instance configuration. Basically, I have two choices here. My default instance, this is a once in a lifetime, once only opportunity. That's not totally true, but your default instance is only an option on your first install. Okay. After that, every other instance, which is nothing more than another running copy of SQL Server, has to have a unique identifier or a unique name. Since this is our first one, we'll go ahead and take that default, which means I can refer to the SQL Server database running on this server simply using the server name. All right, so I'll go with that for now. Click Next. Don't you love that little please wait? Do I have enough hard drive space? I most certainly do. Click Next. Looks good to go there. Here's where I get to select Windows user accounts for my SQL Server services. What do I mean by that? SQL Server runs as various servers under the Windows operating system. Each one of those services will need to have an account that is used to access Windows resources. The rule of thumb, and I'll go one step further and say if you want to keep your job, you want to set up accounts for the individual services and only give what rights and privileges are needed by those accounts to do the job they need to do. And we'll talk more in detail about what exactly those rights would look like. But for now, we're just going to assign specific accounts. In my case, I'm running in a Windows domain, so when I go to select accounts, they will need to already have been created on my domain controller. So I've already done that. So I'm going to go in here, click my drop down, go to Browse, and it's not currently looking at my domain. So I'm going to go Location, and here I get to log into my domain. Click OK. I want the entire directory. There you go. Mel's domain. Click OK. Advanced. If I do Find Now, I can see everything on that domain controller. So here's all the things I've defined out there. And if I scroll down, I don't yet have an account for my SQL Server engine. I actually do have one that I've created for my SQL Server agent over on the domain. I haven't created one for the engine yet. So here, let's back out of this. Cancel, cancel. I'm going to go over here, and since I have the account set up, I'll go ahead and do the agent. Locations again. Hit my domain. Advanced. Give it to me. The whole list. And I'm going to grab this guy. That's already created, and I kind of know what's in there. Click OK. I'm good to go with that one. Now what I don't have, like I said, is something for my SQL Server database engine. So let's do this the right way. While I'm here, I'll go ahead and put a password in. I already know what that is. I'm going to jump over to my domain controller, and I'm going to create that other account. So let's do that. Here I am on my domain controller. How do I know that? Because I made the background green. Administrative tools. Active Directory users and computers, as my young 3-year-old daughter used to say. Go to users, right click, new user. I'm going to spell it out. SQL Server engine. And actually, that's all I need. And that's all I need. With that, click Next. Give it a password. Of course, the user should not change the password. Password cannot be changed, and you probably don't want this one to expire. It's up to you how your security policy works, but typically you don't want your services passwords expiring. Right? So I've created the account. Let's flip back over. Hit this drop down again. Browse locations. Go to my domain. Advanced. SQL Server Engine is in the building. Select that. Click OK. Click OK again. I hope I typed the password the same way twice, or this won't work very well. Right? I think I got it. The startup type. SQL Server Agent is set to manual. SQL Server Database Engine is set to automatic. That's probably self-explanatory, but here goes anyway. I'm not going to be using the agent right away. I may choose to never use it. You don't want services running in the background eating up precious CPU cycles if you're not going to use them. So leave it set to manual or disabled, possibly, right? And the engine, well, that's the whole point of installing it, is to have the database engine in place. You typically will go ahead and have that defaulted to automatic. Flipping over to collation before we move on, please wait. Database engine is set to SQL underscore Latin 1 underscore general CPI underscore case insensitive accent sensitive. If I were to hit customize, there's a huge list of different collations that I can choose from. We'll talk about collation more a little later, but for now, collation simply has to do with when you compare two character strings, how do you determine which one comes ahead of another? Do I consider accents? Do I consider spaces? And it really gets a lot more involved than that. As you can see, there's a huge, long list of collations to choose from. Various Hungarian this. Slavic, Scandinavian, you got a lot of choices. But click OK. I'm sticking with what I had. It's exactly what I need. Analysis services is defaulting to Latin 1 general underscore CI underscore AS. Looks great. So I'm not going to change any of those. Click next. What's my authentication mode? Two choices, Windows off versus mixed mode. The difference here at 32,000 feet and 700 knocks. Windows authentication, Windows does the authentication. SQL says, hey, Windows says you're good, you're good. As opposed to, sometimes SQL does it, sometimes Windows does it, you have a choice. Right? So you could have passwords preserved in SQL Server if you choose. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go with Windows off. Next, I need to specify an SQL Server account that I can use to log in. I'm currently running as Windows Administrator, which typically that wouldn't be the best place to run, but just to keep myself from getting locked out for now, since I'm in a training environment, I'm going to go ahead and add that user to SQL Server. Now, this is one of those things where I'm saying do as I say and not necessarily as I do. In a training environment, you can get away with that. In a production environment, you may not want to do that, right? But I'm going to avoid using that account. I'm going to add another account. So clicking on Add. Once again, same song and dance. It's a domain user account that I've created. And I call him MDM for Mel's the domain master. Click OK, and he's in. Now where did that account come from? Here, let's flip over real quick. Over on my domain controller again, here's an account, MDM, that I've created. And just kind of give you a little forewarning, that account is part of a group, SQL admin. So if I double click the MDM, member of SQL admin. The reason I did that is you want to avoid managing groups as much as possible and you want to avoid managing users as much as possible and manage groups. I think I said that wrong the first time and right the second time, right? You want to manage groups and avoid having to micromanage users. So I've added this user to a group, and then I can add the group, SQL admin, to my SQL database. So going back, let's do one more thing here. Add, that just reminds me, I did something different than what I intended to do. Let's go back. This, advanced again, find SQL admin. Click OK. Click OK again. And actually, let's take this one out. Actually, that's what I originally meant to do. A little wrong turn there, okay? So I'm adding the SQL admin group, which contains MDM. If you didn't have a group, wanted to add the user, you could do that. But I'm going to go with the group. A little cleaner. Click Next. Nope, don't want to send any extra information to anybody about anything. Click Next. Looks good. Nothing failed. No warnings. A couple of unnecessary steps were skipped. Here's the list of what I've selected. Do I like it? I love it. Click Install and let her rip. Once again, the water level will rise slowly on its own, and we don't necessarily need to watch it, so we'll jump right back when it's done. Okay, that process finished with success, success, success. It's alive. Click Next. Your SQL Server installation completed successfully. How about that? Supplemental information, other stuff you can read and have great fun with, right? But we'll leave that for you to chug along through. But with all that done, installation, as simple of an install as it was, is done. Close all this down, and what's new? Click Start. Ooh, look at that. All programs says there's something up. Click on all programs. And I see a couple of new highlighted things. There's my SQL Server and my Windows PowerShell 1.0. It's actually completing a few things on the install, so we want to let that finish. So go to Start. Go ahead and bring up SQL Server, and I want the Management Studio. First time through, you get to watch this little screen roll along. FYI, this is not the latest and greatest copy of SQL Server. There's an R2 release out, which I will probably upgrade to that. I'll probably reinstall that. If you want to do the same, if you have access to it, go for it. But I'm going to run most of this with R2, so later on when you see me back in, you see a little R and a 2 after it up here. That's what that's all about. But for now, it's saying, what do I want to go into? I want to log into the database engine. What server is it on? I'm logging into a local box. Since I didn't go with a named instance, I don't need to give anything after this, such as, instance, name, yada, yada. None of that's needed right now because I didn't give it one. There's a little SQL Server commercial at the bottom. Make SQL Server better, right? But if you click on that once and tell it no, you should be done with that for good, for life, right? Authentication mode, remember there were two. We went with the first. And username administrator. Since I'm doing Windows authentication, it's not prompting me for a user account, but instead saying who, or hey, whoever you're logged in as, that's who you're going to SQL as. So that's why I went on and did my administrator account for now, since I am logged in as my administrator. But click Connect, and that should put me in. So I'm good to go. No databases yet, other than system databases. We'll get into those in a bit. Here's my Object Explorer. Not a whole lot going on over here yet, but that's your Management Studio. Now, we're going to run not under the administrator account, but under the MDM account. So I'm going to, next time in, log out of here and log in as MDM. But that's your installation process. So we're going to move back over to the slides, do a little more talking over there, and then come back and talk a little bit more about what we have installed and what we have in front of us. All right? See you there. What I want to do now is actually take you to the Microsoft website where they list the various features of SQL Server. So here, let's bring up my browser and flash my favorite website in front of you before I move on to the Microsoft site. We're going to msdn.microsoft.com. Let's see here, and we want to go to SQL Server 2008. I want to see features. Just go into the features. Chug, chug, chug. Second on the list, features supported by SQL Server 2008. And if I scroll down this list, you see across the top, basically the same things I just talked about for the most part. Enterprise, Standard, Workgroup, Web, Express Tools, yada, yada, yada. But when we get to the scalability stuff, like I said before, it's really the Enterprise Edition that gives you the scalability components that are associated with SQL Server. So your partitioning, your data compression, your resource governor, your partition table parallelism. Say that fast. All that's enterprise only. High availability. You're going to see the best or the biggest bang for your buck there as well. Here, let me see if I can maximize this a little for you. So multi-instance support is going to be highest with the enterprise, yet it is available almost everywhere else. Online system changes, that's a yes across the board. And for me to go through this entire website with you would be like reading you the dictionary, so I will not bore you with that. But I did want to point out to you that it's there, 1, 2, and just kind of reiterate that, you know, the biggest bang for the, I shouldn't say biggest bang for your buck because it's a lot of money, but you're going to get the most features for an enterprise-wide, you know, really cool, all the stuff you can do with SQL. It's in the Enterprise Edition. It's the best way to put it. And I'm going to be running the Enterprise. So security, once again, it's the Enterprise Edition. It's going to give you the full-blown everything, including SQL Server auditing, replication. Standard gives you quite a bit with replication. Just a couple of things not there with that. Notice that the Developer Edition isn't even listed on here because, once again, that's really the same as the Enterprise Edition, but you can't go into production with it. You're not licensed for production. So manageability, most of the things you're going to want to have access to in manageability are there for the Enterprise and the Standard. Management tools doesn't really change a lot. You've got really the same management interface in most editions of SQL Server. A few development tools out there that are not common in the lower ones over here, but those are pretty much across the board. Same thing with programmability. That's going to be a lot of that's going to be available across the board. Notice your full text search. Now you may not know what that is yet, but you will. But that's basically across the board. The ability to do indexes based on the text in a document and create an index of that to allow searching more quickly through text, massive amounts of text. So really cool stuff. Spatial and location services, look at that. There isn't a blank square in the bunch there, so that's cool. Integration services, Microsoft SQL Server Integration Service, or SSIS, Standard, and the Enterprise Edition is when you're going to find most of that. And on down the list. So I'm not going to bore you with the rest of this, but just wanted to point it out, let you know it's there. But with that, here, let's jump back over to our presentation and continue on. Up next, looking at hardware, looking at disk space, and looking at software. Starting with hardware, and I kind of cheated because I threw in there some software of the operating system, right? But if you're looking at the Enterprise Edition for 32-bit versus the Enterprise Edition for 64-bit, there are your choices. Now, please note, the black is the minimum, the light blue, hopefully that's showing up like that on your screen, or the darker color and the lighter color perhaps, you know, are the absolute minimum and then the minimum recommended. But as you probably well know, the more the better. In any of these cases, the more RAM the better, faster the processor the better. And you know, those minimum numbers really don't have anything to do with what you would use in production, right? That's just to get it installed so you can say, gee, look, it's there, right? But you want to go way beyond that. So the light blue is your minimum recommended. And notice for the OSs, I have 03 or 08 in either case for the Enterprise Edition 32-bit or Enterprise Edition 64-bit. As we get into disk space requirements, nothing really all that astronomical there, nothing there too frightening for today's hardware, right? So that's what you'll need to have for that. So what did we cover? First of all, we started out with the different editions of SQL Server. We talked about what do you need to actually install SQL Server. That included hardware, it included other additional software downloads. So we walked you through all of that, talked about how you can get free evaluation copies of SQL Server. Authentication mode, we touched upon that, which we'll see again later, and then we walked through the actual installation process. Vocabulary you should know, once again, Windows authentication versus SQL Server authentication. We talked about that, where Windows authentication is Windows saying, hey, he's good, let him in, versus SQL Server authentication, this is at, of course, really high level. SQL Server authentication says, I'll check it myself, right? You're being validated by the SQL Server base itself versus Windows doing the authentication. But those are topics you'll see more of when we get into the security video. But for now, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.